Come with me into my kitchen for something that feels like a hug in a spoon. Today we're making Dulce de Leche the traditional Brazilian way, the kind you'll hear people brag about when Minas Gerais comes up in conversation. It's creamy, caramel-toned, and deeply comforting, but what I love most is how humble it starts. Just milk, sugar, and one tiny pinch of baking soda. That's it. No shortcuts, no fancy gadgets, only time, attention, and a little respect for the process. I've got a sturdy pot on the stove, the kind that holds heat evenly, and I'm pouring in 1 liter of milk. You can hear it hit the bottom with that soft, familiar splash. Next goes 2 cups of sugar, falling like pale sand and disappearing as I start to stir. And now the ingredient people always raise an eyebrow at, a pinch of baking soda. Not enough to taste, not enough to announce itself, just enough to quietly do its job. It helps with color, giving that classic warm brown, and it nudges the texture towards smooth and velvety instead of grainy or overly sharp. This is where I want you to slow down with me. Dulce de Leche isn't the kind of recipe you rush between errands. It's the kind you make when you want the kitchen to smell like toasted sweetness and calm. I'm setting the heat low, because this dessert rewards patience and punishes impatience. If you've ever tried to speed it up by cranking the burner, you already know the heartbreak: burned bits on the bottom, a bitter note that won't disappear, and a color that goes too dark too fast. So we start gently. Stirring, watching, letting the milk and sugar become one. In a few minutes it'll look almost unchanged, and that's normal. The transformation is slow at first, then suddenly, it isn't. If you're enjoying this kind of simple, traditional Brazilian cooking, tap like, and tell me, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? And stay with me, because in the next moments, you'll see exactly what to look for as this pale mixture begins its first real shift. I'm back at the stove with a wide, heavy pot. This is one of those recipes where the pot matters almost as much as the ingredients. Into it goes 1 liter of milk, then 2 cups of sugar, and before anything else happens, I pause for the smallest detail that changes everything: a tiny pinch of baking soda. Not enough to taste it, not enough to make it rise like a cake, just enough to gently shift the chemistry so the color deepens and the texture turns silkier instead of grainy. If you've ever wondered why some Dulce de Leche comes out pale or a little sandy, this is one of the reasons. As the sugar hits the milk, it looks deceptively simple, white, thin, and sweet-smelling. I turn the heat to low and stay close, wooden spoon in hand, stirring slowly but steadily. You can hear the quiet scrape along the bottom of the pot, that soft rhythm that feels almost meditative. This is the Minas Gerais way: patient, unhurried, letting time do the heavy lifting while you guide it. Now, here's the mistake that ruins it for so many people: getting impatient and cranking the heat up. The surface might look fine, but the bottom starts catching, and once it burns, that bitter taste never leaves. So I'm watching for the real cues. On low heat, the mixture warms gradually. You'll see a delicate foam appear at the edges and then calm down. The smell shifts too, from plain sweet milk to something warmer, like caramel starting to wake up. If you're enjoying this kind of old-school kitchen calm, give the video a like. It helps me keep bringing these Brazilian classics to your feed. And tell me, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Food, places, traditions, people. What do you most want to understand? I keep stirring, especially along the corners where it likes to cling. The color is still light now, but you can already feel it changing, a touch thicker, a little more resistant to the spoon. And in a few minutes, you're going to see the exact moment it stops being milk and starts becoming Dulce de Leche. So stay with me, because this is where the transformation really begins. With everything in the pot, I set it over low heat and just stay close. At first it looks almost too simple to be worth the wait: milk the color of ivory, sugar dissolving quietly, and that tiny pinch of baking soda doing its invisible work. You'll see it in a few minutes, though. The surface changes from flat and pale to slightly foamy around the edges, like it's waking up. I keep the spoon moving, slow circles, scraping the bottom and the corners where sugar likes to hide. This is the part that feels most like Minas Gerais to me. The kitchen turns calm, the sound becomes steady, and you stop rushing. The mixture starts thinning out, then thickening again, and it can trick you into thinking you should turn up the heat. Don't. The most common mistake with homemade Dulce de Leche is impatience. If you crank the heat to help it along, the bottom will scorch before the top even knows what happened, and that burnt note will follow you all the way to the spoon. Instead, watch for cues. The bubbles get smaller and more frequent, like a gentle simmer that never breaks into a boil. The color shifts little by little, from off-white to beige, and then to that warm caramel tone that makes you lean in. The smell changes, too. At first it's just sweet milk, but soon it becomes toasted and buttery, like the memory of a bakery down the street. When it starts coating the back of the spoon, I slow my stirring into deliberate sweeps, making sure nothing sticks. If you're enjoying these small details, tap like so I know you want more traditional Brazilian kitchen moments like this. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil, the food, the places, or the everyday rituals? Now we're getting to the stage where the pot demands attention. It thickens faster, the spoon leaves trails that briefly hold their shape, and the color deepens in a way that feels almost magical. In the next moments, I'll show you exactly how to recognize the perfect creamy point before it goes too far. Now the kitchen shifts into that slow, comforting rhythm that every traditional Dulce de Leche demands. The pot is still on low heat, and what looked like sweet milk a few minutes ago starts to change right in front of you. At first it's subtle, a faint beige tint clinging to the sides, a soft steam rising like warm breath. I keep the spoon moving in wide, patient circles, scraping the bottom and the corners, because this is where flavor is protected. You'll hear it before you see it. The sound turns from watery to silky, a quiet hush as the liquid thickens. And that tiny pinch of baking soda we added earlier? This is where it earns its place. It helps the mixture develop that deeper caramel tone and smoother texture, the kind people remember from Minas Gerais, where Dulce de Leche isn't just a sweet, it's a small ritual. I'm watching the surface closely, because as it heats, it can foam up unexpectedly. If it rises, don't panic, just pull the pot slightly off the heat for a moment and keep stirring until it settles back down. Here's the most common mistake, and it happens fast: people get impatient and crank the heat. I get it, you want it done. But high heat is how you end up with a scorched bottom and that bitter aftertaste that no amount of sugar can hide. Low and steady is the secret. If you're unsure, use this cue: the mixture should bubble gently, not aggressively. Think small, lazy bubbles that break at the surface like they're taking their time. As the minutes pass, the color deepens from tan to a warm caramel, and the spoon starts leaving a trail that lingers for a second before the surface closes again. I lift the spoon and let it fall back in a ribbon, still fluid, but heavier now, like cream that's learned some discipline. You can smell it too: milk, sugar, and that toasted note that feels like home. If you're enjoying this kind of calm, traditional cooking, tap like so I know to bring more Brazilian classics here. And tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? In the next moments, we'll watch for the exact point where it turns perfectly spoonable, thick, glossy, and impossible not to taste. Now look at the pot. It's not milk anymore, not really. The surface has turned glossy, and the bubbles are slower, heavier, like they're thinking before they rise. This is the part where you don't leave the stove, even just for a second, because the whole personality of the Dulce de Leche is decided right here. I keep the heat low enough that it feels almost too gentle, and I stir in wide, steady sweeps, scraping the bottom with purpose. You can hear it change, too, from a watery shoot to a thicker, soft drag against the spoon. If you've ever made something like this and ended up with a bitter taste, it usually wasn't the ingredients, it was the impatience. Turning the heat up seems like a shortcut, but it's the fastest way to burn the bottom. So here's the cue I use: when I pull the spoon across the base, I want to see the bottom of the pot for a brief moment before it closes back up. If it's closing instantly, we're not there yet. If it stays open like a trench and looks dry, you might be 1 minute away from going too far. The color is deepening now into that warm caramel tone Minas Gerais is famous for, and that tiny pinch of baking soda we added at the beginning is doing its quiet job, helping the mixture brown more evenly and stay creamy instead of turning grainy. I tilt the pot slightly and the Dulce de Leche moves as one slow wave, thick but still alive, and the aroma is pure comfort: sweet milk, toasted sugar, a hint of vanilla even though we didn't add any. This is also when you can choose your style. Some people love it lighter, more like a pourable sauce. Others want it thick enough to sit proudly on a spoon. Me? I like it right in the middle, spoonable, silky, the kind you can spread on toast without it running away. If this is giving you that same cozy feeling, tap like so I know you're with me. And tell me, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? In a moment, I'll show you the exact second I turn off the heat, how it thickens as it cools, and the simple way to store it so it stays perfect. Now look at this pot, the bubbles are slower, heavier, and the color has turned into that warm caramel tone that makes the whole kitchen smell like comfort. This is the moment I want you to notice. When I drag the spoon across the bottom, it doesn't just swirl and disappear anymore, it opens a path for a second, like the mixture is breathing, then gently closes back up. I tilt the spoon and it falls in a thick ribbon, not in drops. That's how you know you're at that perfect, spoonable point Jure is famous for. I turn the heat off and keep stirring for another minute, just to calm it down and smooth out any last tiny lumps. You'll see it looks a little loose right now, and that's normal. As it cools, it tightens and becomes even creamier. I pour it into a glass jar, and the surface shines like satin. Listen to that soft plop as it settles. This is the kind of dulce de leche you can eat warm with a spoon, spread on toast, layer into cakes, or spoon over a slice of cheese the Brazilian way. Simple ingredients, but a result that feels like you did something special. One quick note, it's definitely an energy booster, and because it starts with milk, it brings some calcium along with the sweetness. So yes, it's a treat, but it's also the kind of homemade comfort that makes sense in small, happy servings. Before you go, tell me in the comments, what's your biggest curiosity about Brazil? Is it the food, the music, the landscapes, or maybe the little traditions like pairing something sweet with something salty? And if this video helped you feel confident about the slow heat and steady stirring, leave a like so I know to bring more classic Brazilian recipes into your kitchen. If you want to keep cooking with me, subscribe, because next time we can take this same cozy flavor and turn it into something you can serve to guests without any stress.